Okay, thank you. Right. Welcome everybody to what is now the RHC briefing for the dashboard. At the table we've got Paul Holst, who's our General Manager of Regulatory Implementation, Jen Rochford, who's the Compliance Manager, and once again our John Borriston, our Acting Consents Manager, sitting at the table here. So this is a briefing for all of the committee to look at the work that the staff have done on developing the dashboard, which was part of our revised terms of reference. The file that you've been provided is quite small, and hopefully the slides up here you'll be able to read them on the thing. But when I have some entries coming by the looks of it, but also when this is part of an agenda, we will have to consider how they go out in the papers from a readability perspective. So look, I'm going to hand over to Paul to go through this morning. So floor is yours, Paul.
Kia ora. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, as confirmed, this is a briefing on the dashboard. So purpose of this presentation is to introduce the dashboard to you. This comes out of our data set, and whilst I think the report was run sometime last week and is reasonably accurate with some caveats that I will take you through, the purpose really today isn't to go through the data. The purpose is to take you through the measures and why we think these are important and explain. Some of those measures, no doubt, you will have seen before. But this request came from the committee itself to have operational measures more regularly presented to the committee. And as you'll recall, also, Council, that your terms of reference was amended on the 26th of March to allow for this information to start to come in a more manner. So just to restate, we're here really to explain the measures to you rather than go into the detail. You will receive a formal report, a formal dashboard report through your RHC meeting. So it'll just be a question for the committee to say, when would you like to receive that? And staff have got some ideas as to the frequency. I've handed round, I'll go to the next slide, but I've handed round A3s that may help readability. One of the challenges that we're finding, and maybe that's something that can be resolved reasonably easily, is we're taking information directly out of a data set and then presenting it, and it does leave us with some challenges as well. And so by the time that the report is actually submitted formally to the committee, we'll have those matters resolved. But for today, I hope you can make do with the A3. In terms of consent and compliance activity reporting, the long-term, so this is the other information I suppose you get. The long-term plan, annual plan includes service measures relating to consenting. There's 4 measures, and compliance and incident response, there's 5 measures. These are reported to the quarterly core service report, so Council gets that information. Updates on improvement programmes for consent and compliance are also provided to Regional Delivery Committee, and as previously included reporting on some measures and metrics. And we also provide annual snapshots of compliance and incident response activities. That gives you some of the other reporting that goes to the wider Council. This particular dashboard is really intended to provide you with insurance on consent and compliance activity. So it will present it to you, as I said, at the Regional Hearing Committee, in line with the amendment of the terms of reference, which we've already been through. The dashboard report covers activities in current financial year and also the previous year, so it's provided as a comparison. There are some challenges with making it look exactly like the previous year, but we can talk through that as well. The introductory notes that are provided with you, really, those notes are just explaining the report, but also some of the challenges around the data because of the way that we pull the information. It could be that and we are reliant on the data going into the dashboard by members of staff, that could sometimes be inaccurate. So we wanted to put that caveat on. In the main, in the majority, I think you'll find that the information is correct. There could be a circumstance where the information that we present today could be wrong, and so we wanted to make that clear. And the whole part of the report is that it's one of our first reports that is largely automated, meaning that there's not a lot of manipulation by staff required. It's pulled directly out of and when I say manipulation, actually putting the stuff into a report and spending quite a lot of time to do it. Apparently we can do it in 10 minutes. So it's quite interesting to know that we're moving into the digital age to some degree. Yeah, maybe manipulation was the wrong word, but I simply meant pulling the information out of the system and putting it onto a piece of paper. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, with that being said, I'm gonna hand over to, I think John's first up, and really just to take you through. I think you'll have seen some of these before, but it's really important to go through the purpose of the measures.
Thanks, Paul. One of the messages I give to the staff as the manager is we have a few key things we need to deliver, and two of them are, one is, of course, if consents we process, we will process them in the time frame as set out in our service levels, and the second is we will not create a backlog. So in other words, we will not have consents that get put to one side and get lost, and that's my way of explaining what we're trying to do around here. And the graphs that we put in front of you through pages 1 and 3 with 2 and 4 giving you comparisons to the preceding year shows you the type of data that we've got available to us as staff to manage this process. And we can dig deeper into these as we uncover or see things that cause us a little bit of concern. So page 1, and I know you had the opportunity with the description of each page in there, but I'll quickly just take you through them, but I won't go back through the description there. So the first page is how we're going year to date for the current year. So we started with applications in process of 1,117. We currently have applications in process of 750, which produces your ratio, and the ratio is a key measure for us. If the ratio is point something or other, it means we've got more coming in and less going out, which, and it will occur. I mean, it averages out over a period, and we have to allow for that. But if it keeps carrying on, we've got something building up and back in the backlog there. So it's a good measure for us to have. And the pie chart along the top just gives you an idea in regards to those that, and I'll just the number of RMA days that are still available for some of those that are in process. Of the 750, between the two ranges 0 to 10 and greater than 10, we've got about 475 of those 750 with statutory days remaining on that processing, which is a quick calculation is greater than the 50% for our current target. To achieve our current target on regards to processing the time frame, and it's improving all the time, and it'll certainly set us up well for the target we'll have for the new year that we're heading into. Under that are your bar graphs, and it shows by month the applications in process by status, so where they are actually up to as we work our way through each step of the audit through to the decision process. And in the right-hand side bar graph, it gives you the information, and it gives us the information too, as I say, as staff managing this by age category. And as you can see, it's when you get up to the orange one there, which is 1 to 2 years old, they're a particular focus for this matter of managing our in-process consents and not creating a backlog. I'll move just in the page 2 is for comparison reasons only. That's how we looked in the same setup for the preceding year. And it's great. We look a lot better than we did the preceding year. Is there any questions on those two at all?
it is quite complicated. So I'm quite happy if, given that this is a briefing and not a final to drop into our agenda at this stage, that if you do spend some more time looking at it and have questions to come back through David and I, so that we can discuss them with staff. So we've got Councillor Swiggs. You've got a question?
Yeah, the one thing that sort of stands out to me is the more than 5 years old column, because it kind of lifts the lid on this. And in the absence, I mean, it's great to have it, but it's quite sometimes far out. Will there be like notes or an addendum at the end of these things will say, hey, look, why are some of these applications more than 5 years old? It was more than 5 years old, kind of just so that there's a bit more context to just graphs.
Our current backlog, which, as you know, aware that we're completing through it at the moment, and a lot of them are coming back through the RHC because to get them completed, they need to go through a hearing process. So they will make up some of those. And I can share this with you. I was the consent manager in 2008 through to about late 2010, and some of those greater than 5 years old will be as a result of our inability to manage it properly in those days. It is a difficult process, and one of the things I have learnt, which I didn't know back in those days, but we meet regularly as consent managers with other councils, and they have the similar issue in trying to manage this. I think we've got good tools to allow us to do that, which we didn't have previously.
Can I just remind councillors too that we did get advised pre-Christmas that by the end of November all of the backlog ones were in some sort of process through an RMA, and it's just as John's just said, some of these are coming through the notification process, and because that the label of that one on the right hand side is in process. Yes. Yeah, it's not completed.
I'd just probably add that obviously the report, when it's formally through RHC, it's an assurance report. So quite rightly, we should be able to demonstrate how we're progressing our applications through. Whether we would go into specific details at an RHC, I probably would recommend that we didn't, but in terms of providing the council with, exactly, and like what we wouldn't want to do is create another backlog. So that would be very pertinent questions to be asking us, that's for sure. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Edge.
Oh, just on that first sheet, I suppose the thing later on, not now, but just more clarification on the pie diagram, and that item that has minus 50 to minus 41. What are they? In a wee bit more detail, and what's the problem with those? That would be useful. No, I'll carry on because you just carry on. Thanks.
Okay. Rightio, we'll go to page 3. Thank you.
Page 3. So this is particularly looking at our performance against our timeframes and meeting the target of which in this financial year we're in is 50% of our consents will be processed within the statutory timeframes. And of course, it's an important aspect. It also has an influence upon our performance against budget, because if we don't achieve timeframes, we refund fees. So this covers both of my 2 KPIs or 4 KPIs at a high level that I have. So again, the number of applications received, the decisions issued, and the number withdrawn, returned, not required, and so on. So it shows the movement of the total number of consents versus those that came in. And from that, we come to a number of 61.4% have been completed within the statutory timeframe. And might add, those absorb. That includes those that we processed from the backlog, which of course were not within the statutory timeframe before they went out. So that number is diluted as against the ones that have come in the door this year that we are processing. which are also going out. So it can mislead a bit. So that is the net score of all the consents that we sent out the door so far for this year. And and the good news is that it is well in excess of our target of 50%, and it's trending to put us in a good state instead for next year. You will see in the table below, it moves up and down a bit, and that depends upon the number of backlog ones that we're processing at the time, and it does fluctuate up and down, but the trend itself is heading in the right direction. And I'm not sure I need to go through much in regards to the actual bar graphs, but again, if there's any questions.
So just, sorry, I'll come to you in a minute, Councillor Swiggs. Just with regard to the statutory timeframe compliance, it's not a rolling average, which is great because our new year starts very soon. So we'll start again. I'm just looking at the last 6 months, and it does depend on the numbers in each month, but I mean, we could be looking at 80%.
Yes.
Can you just remind me what our target is for this year going forward? And I know it was increasing, but was it 95 by 2 years' time?
I think it's 95, yes, and
Yeah.
I apologise because my horizon's not quite that long.
Okay.
Right, but I'm actually, I can make a brave statement because I'm only acting. We're actually heading towards 95. I'm comfortable in my current role, in this accountability for the next week or so. 95% is looking pretty good.
Yeah.
That is correct. It's
Okay.
95 here.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Swiggs.
Well, who can I hold account on that one? Because only 2 weeks, but I just wanted to. I was looking at that clear, and I actually was. All I wanted to say was that is very encouraging. Numbers when you just look at sort of January 2025. It looks like there was a fire lit under the belly of the consenting team, and it really looks good. So I'm pleased to see that, and it's really good to see this so transparently. Awesome work.
Councillor East.
Look, my apologies. I'm going to have to disappear to a funeral in a couple of minutes, but I'd just like to comment and thank staff for the work that's gone into the report so far. My only comment really is we're looking at a quarterly report, and I wonder whether we could sort of just look at some key metrics that may be reported in a very sort of condensed form on a monthly basis to the committee, rather than sort of having to wait 3 or 4 months for a full report. So I'd be quite keen to just engage in a bit of a discussion and looking at some key metrics that we could incorporate once a month.
I'm happy to do that, Councillor. I suppose what I was going to at some point say is this report will no doubt change. I think compliance metrics will no doubt change as you, in the not too distant future, agree on what things are important, and it'll have an iterative nature. You might also request us to do things that we'll say that sounds a really sensible thing to start reporting, but the data might be a challenge for us. So we're going to keep a really active list of things that we try to bring forward, but on the basis that we can automate it. So I am, through the chair, open to a conversation around if there was I think this should be a quarterly report in line with all of our LTP and annual plan reporting, but there's nothing to stop if we can meet it in terms of resource to give you a condensed version more regularly.
A great start, but I do appreciate it as pretty much a fluid document that will morph into all sorts of forms going forward. Thank you, and my apologies for an early departure.
Thank you, David. So we'll carry on then. Thank you.
I think that's the consent side done.
Yep. Oh, sorry. Jen.
I'll let staff explain this one.
Oh, yeah,
I've got
yeah,
a question
okay.
on that.
Right, Jen, where you go.
So I'll just run through, this slide here. These are quite familiar to you, so I'll just do a brief overview. But on the left-hand side, that's incident response. And so we have the total in the bottom left-hand corner of the incidents that we've responded to date this year, or received to date this year, which is 3,104. But in the top right-hand corner, the number that we've closed and the number that remain open. It also gives you an indication of level of compliance. So you can see quite a high level of low risk non-compliance for these incidents, which is very normal and often related to things like odor, smoke, and such. I think you may want to discuss this pie chart. We did some adjustments for incident response to align the colors to the compliance, and it means now that there's quite a large section 15 piece of the pie there, which doesn't give you visibility of which ones are discharged to air, discharged to water, discharged to land. You may want maybe different colors of blue, so it's still, you're seeing that they're all discharges, but a discharge to air is very different from a discharge to water. And so I guess my recommendation may be that we amend that. On the right-hand side, these are compliance. So this is our proactive monitoring that we do. And so you'll see that we have a number of inspections, which is 3,601. But the number of consents that we've monitored down in that bottom number is 2,902. And that's because we often monitor the same consent. Either because there's a non-compliance or it's a consent that requires multiple monitoring throughout the year. So that's just explaining the difference, why the number of consents monitored is lower than the number of inspections. You'll also see how many inspections we've graded versus which ones are still in process. So the reports are being written. Paul did mention that overall these these measures in my mind are going to need adjusting now that we're moving into the risk measures of risk. I want to show you how the work that we're doing is actually translating in an improvement in compliance status. The only reason we have not done that, while we have the risk framework and we're setting the baseline for the new service measures, we do not have that automated. So this is the report that we can automate because this is the current system we have. But I do not feel that this is the best way to give you assurance that our compliance service is making a difference. And so we will work with you on providing a future. Okay, you're nodding, so that's good. Any questions on this one?
So just from, I'll come to you in a minute, Councillor, just from the timing perspective, and thank you for your honesty around the graphs that we're getting, or the information that we're getting in this form. When do you think you may have something else that would be more helpful to us?
Yeah, I think that by the next quarter we can start that conversation around what the future measures could look like, so that you're providing feedback on what we would like to propose.
Okay.
And then I don't have a absolute time frame on when we will have it automated, but I think I'm hopeful by the next quarter we can start.
I think carry on doing what this is in the meantime, but as long as we're aware of the changing circumstances in the background. Councillor Edge, and then I'll go to Councillor Swiggs.
Yeah, thanks for this. And I agree with you that it would be really useful. I look at those compliance inspections where it has low risk, moderate, significant, and being able to clearly find out, and for example, the significant non-compliance, what is that related to? Is that air? Is it land discharge, effluent discharge? What are the key elements that are causing that? and then over time, are we addressing those better? So that would be really useful information. I know other councillors are sort of concerned about that too, especially the high risk consents that we have. And there has been requests in the past about that, more information about those 10 or so, half a dozen or dozen high risk consents, and how are they performing? I think whether that's a separate thing or not. In terms of the risk assurance stuff, so this will go to regional delivery at some point. Does it? Where does the Audit and Risk Committee, do they get to have a look at this, or or is that something that could be requested by that committee?
As I understand it, I think this will be reported through to council through the minutes of the regional hearing committee. And as I'd alluded to earlier on, elements of assurance reporting goes to regional delivery committee through our quarterly reports. So very similar measures and all of our improvement programs. I don't know exactly what goes. I don't think this does go to the audit and risk committee. I don't believe that's the case at the moment.
So in terms of audit and risk, it would really be, because we're wanting assurance on what we're doing as an organisation. So if there does seem to be through this committee or regional delivery that there is a problem, then it can be elevated, I suppose. Yeah,
the recommendation can be elevated. Well, I think we've got that in our terms of reference somewhere.
Yep.
So that's how it gets into an audit and risk committee.
Great, thanks.
Yep. Did I have Councillor Swiggs next, and then Councillor Davies?
I was looking for the report, the Te Uru Kahika report on compliance. Is it Te Uru Kahika? That might be why I'm not finding it, but it's that regional council's report on compliance, and it always has our council as, I think this year it was about 70-something% or whatnot in terms of compliance. But when I look at the compliance inspections completed and whatnot, when every other regional council was about 100%, and then I look at these numbers and we're at 100%. So what is the disconnect here?
I think what you're referring to is responding to incidents. I think what you'll find that other councils, if they simply say thank you for reporting this incident, they report that as responding. We are very honest in our report, so if we receive something that potentially isn't even for our council, or it is very minor and we just say thank you, we don't report that as responding. And so I feel that, and we've been very honest with Te Ura Kahika, that those reports should not be used as a scorecard for each of the councils, because we are not measuring like for like. And so it turns into a explanation of why our numbers are different from a regional council, but we're comparing apples and oranges. And so we're having that very honest conversation with them about how can we make these reports so that we're not having to explain why it looks or appears that one council is performing better than another. We also have our numbers are off the scale around what we have as far as number of consents or the number of incidents that we need to respond to. So even comparing us to some other councils is verging on ridiculous. And so I think the Te Ura Kahika report, while you can take it as, maybe something for you to ask questions, we do not see value in that report because of the differences in understanding or interpreting how we are responding. We are very honest in our report.
I think that's the first time I've heard this being explained to me like this, because I have the community coming to me and saying, why is your council so bad compared to other councils? And so this is really interesting to report that. And we're going to face another part of this very shortly with the DIA benchmarks and dashboard that they're going to put out. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But I think if we can I think there's something we need to do in that Te Uru Kahika report compared to what I'm now seeing here, because it's really not acceptable when I get communities saying, look, your council's bad, because that's what is being portrayed through that report. So it's really useful having this information now to sort of actually dig into that and see how we can maybe support your conversations that you're having there, so that we have a far better transparency on what's going on.
Thank Councillor Davies.
So 3,600 inspections over kind of 240 working days. It's about 15 a day. And just wondering what the note is at the bottom around the unable to determine compliance inspections have been excluded.
It just means that if we undertook an inspection and at the time of inspecting we were unable to make a compliance decision because either the information wasn't provided, we just haven't included it there because we weren't able to say if it was fully compliant, low risk, moderate, or significant. So sometimes when you go out on site, either the conditions weren't there for us to make that clear determination, so they've just been excluded from this report.
I imagine that would be quite a small number, given that most of consents and compliance have actually a range of conditions. And I think that it has been said before, we've got something like 417,000 consent conditions on all our consents. So that's a big job. We're never going to do that, and that's why we have to prioritise it. Look, I'm just conscious that we are scheduled to come back at 10 o'clock, so we will look for a break. But and Jennifer's just talked about the compliance side of the starter changing in the future. Does anybody else have any burning questions on the next couple of pages, or is there anything that you would like to particularly highlight, Jen, there?
Nothing to highlight.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The only one on this page is that these link directly to service measures. So measuring our response within the 2 hours for elevated and within the 2 days for the non-elevated responses. So those are direct measures to service measures that we will have to persist with because that is in the long-term plan. And also the other one is the action plan, that we have to do 100% of action plans for any of our non-compliance. So some of these will remain because they are directly linked to your service measures.
Okay, Councillor Edge?
Oh, just quickly, I don't personally see the need for a monthly update for this quarterly pre the regional delivery report that goes to them, so that this committee can have provide some feedback to that when it comes, if need be.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I think there's a couple of things for me. From a frequency perspective, I think that quarterly's probably, in my view, a little bit too long, and I'd like to think that we could at least bring it every 2 months. And I'd be thinking that, given that this is pretty much automated and live and takes, I think, 10 days, well, hopefully we could get it down a little bit less than that. And 10 minutes, sorry, 10 minutes. You did say 10 something. 10 minutes, that perhaps like the second Wednesday of the month, it could be in the RHC agenda. And if we didn't have a meeting, that would be fine. We would still make it an agenda, which this was discussed in, I think. So that would be my thinking, that perhaps staff could think about and come back and discuss with perhaps David and I around that timing. Yeah, and the only other one that I think I would like to see added in, and I'm not sure, is around that user pays, how we're going against that measure, because that's in our, yes, it is actually, I think, in our service level agreements. It's definitely something that's quite important from a ratepayer perspective and some councillors' views at the table. So if we can have that incorporated into a future one as well, that would be great.
What I would like to do with all those ones that you'd like but they're not currently displayed, would keep that on the paper to say, and on the basis that you agree that when we do bring it, it's because we've figured out how to automate it rather than have to get it some other way. So we'll keep an active list that's visible to the committee.
Okay. So as I said, councillors, if anybody, now that you've got the one pager that went with us, I don't think this was actually on the documents that was originally printed. If you want to have a look at it again and got any questions, please fire them in and we can get them answered. But thank you for your direction and advice this morning. So thank you, staff,
Thank you.
for the update.